You need a car, maybe?
See, the thing is with me, you dig, I need to know some more about it. I wish you had some more literature about the educational thing here. Because, you dig, as far as we're concerned in the struggle, the way we look at struggle is that this depends on the educational thing, you dig. Because
this depends on the education. Well, the whole thing.
No, but in the end, this does. You can form this with no education. You can form this and this.
No, not the way we're talking about forming it. You know, right. We're talking about forming it right. You know, it's not on the paper. We didn't write it on the paper.
You form it right with no education.
No.
Let me give you an example. Jomo Kenyatta formed the excellent revolution with no education. And on the end thing, Jomo told you know, you've been educated hate the enemy, but I'm your brother. I'll help you lead the revolution. Now I'm going to oppress you. Another example, Papa Doc in Haiti. Papa Doc in Haiti hated everything white. Man, you couldn't put this white paper in front of Papa Doc's face. But he moved all the white people out and he took over and be oppressed. He did, because of no education. And the people that had been educated, they just said that we don't hate the people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. So we got to know the educational program to find out what is going to be in the finale. A lot of people, Jomo Kenyatta is called never a revolutionary, but an ex-revolutionary. So is Papa Doc. They brought on a successful revolution. That thing in the Bantu freedom fighters, all that kind of action. What we're saying is the end. That you don't judge Castro now. You can't do it. Nobody in this room could judge whether Castro's going to be a revolutionary or not. You know what I mean? We're talking about things, you know what I mean, with China, the People's Republic, and even at the stage they're in now, talking about even going on further into a communistic state. That's what we're talking about. Those are revolutionary. So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines, where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa now, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be an educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalists. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Hotel fam, it's your brother Sarah Suit and Seti coming at you again with this real talk. Now, it's a lot more out here that once was conscious, now, you understand what I'm saying? Now, all of a sudden, is Obama fanatics. As if these come in and all of a sudden save you. You understand what I'm saying? We are a Messiah-prone people. Always looking for a savior. And because the know you are a Messiah-prone people, always looking for a savior, slide one on into you. And you accepting. You got to understand that Obama came from nothing. Don't know come from nothing and get billions of dollars of campaign money. You understand what I'm saying? And ain't got no background in politics. This is really a nobody. And for him to get that amount of money coming from nowhere shows me that this is a script that has been written out. This is the new Mandela for a come out of the prison to the president. That's a script. You don't come from nowhere and get that kind of money without a script behind it. Is you a fool? Always looking for a savior. Always looking for a Messiah. And these have given you one. Now, Obama is the face of the holistic system of America and Europe. A black face. Even though he's a because his mama is a and when you trace that man's mitochondrial DNA, it goes back up into Europe. Did y'all not read Destruction of Black Civilization? He said it's them breeds that laid in there into the governments of Egypt because they had our phenotype. They have our phenotype, but they are in cahoots with their mama's father, which is that Arab. And they using that man's phenotype. They're not using his mind because he don't have a black mind. They're using his phenotype so that he can mislead all you little low-life that don't have a mind of your own. So now you Obama, Obama, Obama. Now we were once looked at as slaves all around the world. People know that we don't have no pull in America, but now with Obama's face, a black face, phenotypically, culturally, racially, you are defined by your mother. He's a dark-skinned, that's all he is. And that's what he ran on, was his mama and his grandmother, his grandfather. He rarely, even at all, mentioned his family in Kenya. He couldn't do it. So anytime you got to shun a part of your existence, this can be bought. He can be used as a pawn to lead our people again in the wrong direction. Now, if you're making strides, if you got a agenda, and your agenda and your objectives is liberation for African people, you should continue on in your agenda. You will be again, deeper in the again, following behind a who ain't gonna lead you nowhere but deeper into this clutches. Now again, we were once looked at as slaves, but now that Obama being a black face is premier, he's premier as the president of the United States, he's premier in the imperialistic empire of America and Europe. When these around the world and do they dirt, you ain't free from their attack no more because you looked at as a partner. That's what they done did. They done forced hand. So now, you know, people used to look at us. They knew we was doormats over in this. But now Obama is going to ask you to be a partner in this imperialistic system. And a lot of you are going to join. You're going to join. Your agenda as a revolutionary is not to join the but to destroy it. Y'all can't see this. I'm a man that come out of nowhere get billions of dollars of campaign contributions. A man with no record. Can't you understand that's the new Mandela coming up out of nothing to get the top spot? You don't do that out of script. The very system that raped, robbed, and ravaged Africa, we not running it. I mean, I'm looking at it from a phenotypical standpoint. We're running it now. The same system that raped, robbed, and ravaged our people, we running it. Ain't that a damn shame? Ain't that a damn shame? But I'm glad that you have come out and sided with that. I'm so glad, because when the hit the fan, all you is gonna get it. You gonna get it, because you didn't came out and established that you are willing to ride with that. That's what you're doing. Ain't no fucking change in the agenda of the United States of America. It is still an imperialistic system. And you gonna let this talk you in to being a partner in that system. Remember, Obama was born through a, and that man's mitochondrial DNA points him back up into Europe. He's the product of a, and Africa is a matriarchal society. Our royalty comes through our woman. It comes through the black woman.
Do you support reparations for black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
Listen, it is so dark and so diabolical the way that these people have ushered in abortion, and especially how it pertains to our community. Abortion made it where the KKK was irrelevant. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more when you're ready to get into it.
Let's talk about it now. So,
abortion made the KKK irrelevant. Like, why would I, if I'm a white supremacist, like they call my friends, my white Republican friends who I love, who have helped me with Auntie Angie's house, and I'll stand for them any day, because you can't say Black Lives Matter and call them a racist, and you're standing in the front line at the abortion clinic to abort the black life that you created. Nothing is more racist, right, than you. So the KKK has completely done away, right? Well, the abortion is done away with the KKK because, like I was saying, if I'm a white supremacist and I want to get rid of black people, right, what's the best way to do it?
Get them to get rid of their own.
Get rid of it yourself. I don't have to worry about going to jail, right? And you can put the blame on me all you want, but you're the one that pulled the trigger, right? It's your choice.
It's your choice.
Right. We're going to give you a choice. So now we don't have to worry about anybody knocking on our doors in white hoods. Abortion has ended far more black lives than the KKK ever will. The KKK doesn't stand a chance. And Margaret Sanger said, and this, anybody with an inkling of common sense can go and do their own research. It doesn't have to come from Lara Logan. It doesn't have to come from Angela Stanton King. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who was a eugenist, said herself, the best way to get rid of is to kill him before he's born. Those were her exact words, right? And since the passing of Roe v. Wade, over 20 million black lives has been ended. And what they did was, through the Negro Project and Title X funding, they went around convincing a bunch of black preachers, right? Because they knew that they had the congregation, they had the community, that birth control, right, was better for us, right? And all of it was a depopulation tactic, right? You don't see those big families like we saw years ago. Like when I was coming up, my grandmother had 10 kids. A woman having 10 kids this day is somewhat unheard of. We'd be lucky if they even get one with the black maternal health crisis that we're currently dealing with. And so what they did was they went around and they encouraged preachers to preach this freedom and liberation to their congregations. You want to be free? You want to be successful? Control the birth rate of your children. So Planned Parenthood has always been Parenthood Planned. See, back then they would call us colored women when they target us. Now they say women of color. See, it's always turned around. It's always backwards. Just how the enemy works. He takes anything that God has and he flips it upside down. Just like with the rainbow, they take the cross, they turn the cross upside down. So then you got birth control. Birth control is nothing more than controlled birth. So when they began to control the birth rate of black Americans, and we can see now since the passing of Roe v. Wade, which was in 1973, our population is still at 13%.
Yes.
We have remained stagnant. We have not grown, and we are constantly crying about being a minority. How in the world are you ever going to become the majority if you are proudly advocating, voting, fighting for abortion? You don't have to do the work. White supremacists don't have to figure out a way to get rid of you. You won't even give your child a chance. Abortion was one of the smartest and most strategic things that white supremacy ever invented. Make black women feel free and liberated with a choice to terminate their own children. It's diabolical.
It's diabolical. It's truly evil.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
If in fact a calculation comes to you that you are satisfied with, would you then say, I'm for reparations?
The answer is it would depend on what it was and will it include Native Americans as well.
Vice President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, let me, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America, and we should invest in them. Everybody will benefit from it, every single American, and you should get used to it. This is a nation of immigrants. That's who we are. That's why we're who we are. That's what makes us different, and we should invest in them. Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Between the ratification of the Constitution in 1789 and 1850, there's increasing conflict over the rendition of fugitives from slavery. And so the southernmost states, so North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, make a demand, which is that they will be able to claim anybody who escapes from slavery in the slave states to the free states. And this immediately puts the freedom of every single African American in the North at a much greater level of threat.
The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 was the last-ditch effort of those slaveholders who wanted to hold on to the bondage and greed of slavery.
The 1850 Fugitive Slave Act created enforcement mechanisms that forced and required the federal government to get in the business of sending back to slavery those who ran away. Now the federal government was going to go after those who had fled to northern states. This hadn't happened before.
What we saw were these slaveholders who were very politically connected and very wealthy, and they lobbied the Congress to have a Fugitive Slave Act that not only meant that their escaped property would be brought back, but anyone, black or white, involved in assisting that person to escape slavery would also have criminal consequences.
Hardships imposed by this atrocious and shameless law were cruel and shocking. Although I was now myself free, I was not without apprehension. Even colored people who had been free all their lives felt themselves very insecure in their freedom.
Douglass argued in 1850, in the wake of the fugitive slave law being passed, that blacks had the right to use violence to resist fugitive slave catchers.
It can never be wrong for the imbruted and whip-scarred slaves or their friends to hunt, harass, and even strike down the traffickers in human flesh.
That was a radical position, using violence as a way to challenge slave catchers. And he says that the best way to make the Fugitive Slave Act a dead letter is to make 2 or 3 dead kidnappers. And he says that this is a thing that's justifiable.
After the Fugitive Slave Act, Frederick Douglass knew that it would come to war.
I've never owned anyone. My neighbors, as far as I know, have never been owned by anyone. But the people who say we don't owe any reparations for the Civil War are ignoring something really huge. Or maybe they just don't know. Some people already got reparations. White people. White enslavers were paid for losing their human property. The actual people who were raped, tortured, whipped, and sold, and worse, were promised land to get a fresh start after the war, but they got nothing. When slavery was abolished, Congress paid nearly $1 million, which is 30 million in today's bucks, to white enslavers as compensation for losing their property in a war they lost. If a freed person didn't hit the road fast enough, they risked being re-enslaved under new laws that were just workarounds for all these white people losing their slaves. After the Civil War ended, Union General Sherman set aside 400,000 acres of confiscated Confederate land for black families to start new lives on, up to 40 acres each. The Army loaned out mules to help them work the land. That's where the phrase 40 acres and a mule comes from. Black people were already working some of this land when Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson became president. Well, Johnson reversed the order. He gave the land back to the same Confederates who had just tried to destroy the country. The freed people were evicted. So they made all these things into crimes that were non-crimes. They were things like, if a black person didn't have a job, that was a crime. If a black person couldn't prove that they had a job, that was a crime. You could get arrested for that and a lot of other ridiculous things. But once you were in jail, you could be leased out as labor for private profit. This system of convict leasing allowed white landowners and businesses to replace slavery with something just as violent, just as profitable as slavery. No wonder there are still Confederate flags all across the South. Even after slavery was abolished, black Americans were not safe. Public lynchings became a regular threat. They were a form of terror used to keep freed people in their place. They were planned events, announced in advance so everybody could attend. They were held in broad daylight. White families brought their children to watch black people being hanged, tortured, brutally murdered. It was a festival. People sold food. There were postcards made. People could buy postcards of the mutilated bodies hanging from trees. and mail them in the mail or keep them as souvenirs. This country took care of Civil War criminals and punished the ones the war was supposed to free. And there was a lot more abuse I just can't fit into this video.
Thank you all very much. The members of Congress and distinguished guests, my fellow Americans, we gather here today to right a grave wrong. More than 40 years ago, shortly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry living in the United States were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in makeshift internment camps. This action was taken without trial, without jury. It was based solely on race, for these 120,000 were Americans of Japanese descent. Yes, the nation was then at war, struggling for its survival, and it's not for us today to pass judgment upon those who may have made mistakes while engaged in that great struggle. Yet we must recognize that the internment of Japanese Americans was just that, a mistake. For throughout the war, Japanese Americans in the tens of thousands remained utterly loyal to the United States. Indeed, scores of Japanese Americans volunteered for our armed forces, many stepping forward in the internment camps themselves. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team, made up entirely of Japanese Americans, served with immense distinction to defend this nation, their nation. Yet back at home, the soldiers' families were being denied the very freedom for which so many of the soldiers themselves were laying down their lives. Congressman Norman Mineta, with us today, was 10 years old when his family was interned. In the congressman's words, "My own family was sent first to Santa Anita Racetrack. We showered in the horse paddocks. Some families lived in converted stables, others in hastily thrown together barracks. We were then moved to Heart Mountain, Wyoming, where our entire family lived in one small room of a rude tar paper barrack. Like so many tens of thousands of others, the members of the Mineta family lived in those conditions not for a matter of weeks or months, but for 3 long years. The legislation that I am about to sign provides for a restitution payment to each of the 60,000 survivors, surviving Japanese Americans, of the 120,000 who were relocated or detained. Yet no payment can make up for those lost years. So what is most important in this bill has less to do with property than with honor. For here we admit a wrong. Here we reaffirm our commitment as a nation to equal justice under the law. I'd like to note that the bill I'm about to sign also provides funds for members of the Aleut community who were evacuated from the Aleutian and Pribilof Islands after a Japanese attack in 1942. This action was taken for the Aleut's own protection, but property was lost or damaged that has never been replaced. And now in closing, I wonder whether you'd permit me one personal reminiscence. Thank you and God bless you, and now let me sign H.R. 442, so fittingly named in honor of the 442nd.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by